Hello, welcome to today's episode of Juice in the Numbers, your movies podcast. I am your host, Joshua Tracy.
And I'm Corwin and Josh.
We'll probably talk about it more in full on Thursday since it's the sports edition Thursdays. Monday. Jesus, Monday. Oh, man, I have no concept of time. I'm still working, so that shouldn't be happening. So anyway, we'll talk about probably more on the Monday episode, but there will eventually be sports news. It looks like the NBA has a tentative plan. The NHL is in the final stages of putting together a plan, and the MLB is trying its best to not have a plan, but might have one anyway. So hopefully, I say with mixed feelings, the movies episode of this podcast goes away in the coming month and a half. But again, we'll talk about it more in detail on Monday's episode. But for now, welcome to the movies edition.
Hey.
Woo! All right. So today we're talking about the 2020 film The Invisible Man, and 2004 was The Departed. Corwin, are you ready to get started?
Yeah, now that I know what you're actually talking about, yes, The Invisible Man was 2020.
Yeah, all right. Good.
But yes, I'm ready.
All right, well then let's get started with The Departed. I hate myself already. I hated myself when I thought of it, and I hate myself more than now that I said it.
Fucking love it.
All right, so The Departed, a 2006 film directed by Martin Scorsese, written by William Moynihan and others, starring Leo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, Jack Nicholson, Mark Wahlberg, Martin Sheen. Oh my God, so many people. Vera Farmiga, Anthony Anderson. It's a ridiculous cast. I'm sure we'll talk about it.
Every time we talk about Vera Farmiga, we need to bring up that she went to my high school.
Yep, Flemington, New Jersey. Woo! Any guess as to the estimated budget of this film?
I'm gonna say $120 million.
You're high, but at the same time, high is the direction I would have gone as well, and this is on the high side. This might be the highest estimated budget of any film we've done so far, $90 million.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. It raked in cumulative worldwide gross $290 million, so certainly a success. It won 4 Oscars. Damn it, I had it up. God damn it, Josh, you and your many tabs. It won Best Motion Picture of the Year for Graham King. Yeah, I know. Best Achievement in Directing for Martin Scorsese. Best Writing Adapted Screenplay for William Moynihan. I love saying that last name. Best Achievement in Film Editing for Thelma Schoonmaker. And Best Performance by an Actor in a Supporting Role for Mark Wahlberg. It follows an undercover cop and a mole in the police attempt to identify each other while infiltrating an Irish gang in South Boston. Corwin, what do you think of this film?
I love this movie. This has forever been one of my favorite movies. It was one of my favorite movies when I still didn't understand what was going on in this movie. I think Marky Mark being in this and just being a ridiculous character the entire time is the reason why. After that, there's really no other things to talk about this movie because it's just Marky Mark the whole time. But yeah, I love this. I think it's a tremendous story. One of the most, I don't know, I feel like it's not as unique as I hold it up to be, but at the same time, this being a, cornerstone movie for me, it felt original and wildly unique at the time. But even still, I would very much consider it that. It's basically 2 cops, one undercover, one secretly a rat, trying to sniff each other out while both, quote-unquote, working for the biggest mob boss in Boston, with just a tremendous set of characters. Yes, so conclusion, I love this movie.
Yeah, it's an insane cast. I mean, Alec Baldwin also very prominently in this. This is very famously a remake of a 2002 Hong Kong film called Internal Affairs, which is also very good in of its own right. It's basically a shot-for-shot remake in a lot of ways, but with that certain Scorsese edge to it that we all know and love so dearly.
Mhm.
Goddamn.
That is a fact that I've very much forgot over the years, that it's the same movie as Internal Affairs.
Yeah, and they both. I mean, it's very clearly the exact same movie, but they both have a different kind of feel to it. Part of that feeling comes from the fact that this movie takes place in Boston and feels like it takes place in Boston. And god damn it, does it remind me how much I really hate Boston. Um, my notes in order are indoctrination is powerful from the beginning scenes, and then it's I fucking hate Mark Wahlberg because I really do, and then the Boston accent is the worst atrocity in American history. I also have here fuck the Dropkick Murphys. Uh, yeah, I really really can't stand everything about Boston. Um,
Wow, you don't like shipping up to Boston?
I think it's such a trash song, and I think the fact that it's held up to be such like a pillar of whatever the fuck they want to call that type of music is really pathetic. And I think if you like it, I think you're probably a pretty bad person on the inside, where it counts the most.
Hey, all right. No further comments on the subject because I like doing this podcast with Josh. Uh, fuck. I'll just want to say that my second note is also about Mark Wahlberg, but how much I love him. And when he does these wacky, non-serious characters, um, it's just so fucking funny. And like, I still to this day don't know if he's trying to be funny for these movies and for these characters, but god damn, it's hilarious. Like him in this, him in Pain and Gain, him and the other guys, even him in The Happening, which I choose to believe is a comedy, is fucking hilarious.
This is another case of me hating a professional who has nothing to do which has nothing to do with their work as much as it has to do with their personal life because god damn it, Mark Wahlberg is an atrocious human being.
Oh,
And
he's a piece of shit.
oh my god, yeah, he's a racist and he should probably still be in jail. And it's so bad, but whatever. It's a whole separate conversation. So, my first note is indoctrination is powerful.
I just want to say before we jump in, I still hold Donnie to those standards, and I just kind of have let Mark Wahlberg pass because he's funny, and that I feel bad about that.
Hey, that's honestly like a reality, though. Oftentimes, the more famous you are, the easier it is for people to just like wash over your sketchy past. But
Chris Brown's still a thing.
which is genuinely shocking because that was so. It doesn't matter. All right, nope, we're not doing it. We're staying light and breezy. So Mark Wahlberg, no, not Mark Wahlberg. Fucking Matt Damon. God damn it, I am going to mix these two white boys up all night. Matt Damon. His character. We start off with him being a child in a diner in Boston, and Jack Nicholson's character basically buying his affection for no reason. I guess just to get more youth involved in his racket that he can eventually have become soldiers.
I kind of
And
viewed it as he understands this power of indoctrination, and
yeah,
he's got to buy them at a young age to read.
and I think that in one of the final scenes in which one of the other police officers reveals themselves to also be a mole for Jack Nicholson's kid, Frank. Yeah, Frank.
Frank,
Uh, yeah, that you see that this is almost certainly by far or far from being the only person that Jack Nicholson did this to. But it I mean, it really shows that indoctrination is a immense force. I mean, he got this kid, seemingly do right kid, gets good grades, his whose parents felt responsible enough to let him chill out at a diner by himself, which means he also had like a little bit of money in his pocket since he was at the diner in the first place. You know, so
they died.
they died.
Like that was the whole point of like that opening scene. It's like, yeah, his parents like died or something,
Oh man, I missed that entirely.
and like that's why he was buying him the groceries and stuff because like he felt bad that like this kid's life is fucked up.
Oh yeah, no, that went right over. I honestly, with movies I've seen a bunch of times, I gloss over a lot of scenes.
That's fair.
I'm not even gonna lie to you here. If I've seen the movie enough times that I feel as though I'm within my right to zone out a little bit, I do it.
Yeah, that's
So,
fair.
sorry.
I honestly did this a couple times with this movie just because, again, this is one of the few movies I've seen like many, many times.
So how oh, I don't remember where I was going with that. Never mind. um so Jack Nicholson in this movie is a wild character.
Mm-hmm.
He The only complaint I have is that he definitely like adds and drops the Boston accent as the film goes on. There's some points where I can almost hear Martin Scorsese in the background saying, "Jack, come on, less R's, give me fewer R's." Um, and it's a little bit jarring at some points, but god damn it, if this isn't the exact character that Jack Nicholson was like born to be.
I had that exact note of just this is just a purely Jack Nicholson movie. It's perfect for him. Like the specific scene was when he was throwing handfuls of coke up whores' asses and like telling the other whores to like go to town until your face is fucking numb. That was just like, wow, this like a hidden camera scene in Jack Nicholson's trailer.
I wouldn't in the least be surprised. I mean, my God, this is a man who certainly survived the 60s. The one thing, though, that I want to ask you about his character that I wasn't something I'd thought about, I guess, until this watch through. So I don't know how organized crime really works because I've never done it, or really spent the time or effort to like look into it. But I'd have to assume that a man seemingly of Jack Nicholson's stature within the organized crime community probably wouldn't have to do nearly as much of the legwork as he does in this film, because he does a lot of his own legwork in this film, right?
Yeah, again, there's some lines in there about like, yo, Frank, like you should not be here for this. Like, what are you doing? And he's just like, I'm doing it fucking myself. God damn it. Like, he talks about like he doesn't need the money, he doesn't need the bitches. He's just doing it because he likes to do it.
Which on the one hand I get, but it also feels weird because they do make like allusions to the fact that he owns other businesses. Like he was at what was it, a strip club that they own? No, a porn theater.
Adult movie theater.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
he said he owned. So he clearly does own other. I mean, I'm pressed to call it a legitimate business if you own an adult theater, but for tax purposes, I'm sure it's legitimate. Uh, and to like not be more concerned with that, because usually, I don't mean to stereotype mafia movies or mob movies, but typically the head honcho guy, I imagine sitting behind a desk, Don Corleone style, talking about the affairs while like handling the paperwork and day to day of the legitimate side of businesses to give him uh, more of a presence behind the legitimate side of it and to give him culpability in against the crime side of it, which you certainly don't get from this. It's weird. I don't know. It was distracting for me.
One of those things I really liked about this though was that like it felt that sense of like grittiness and hands-on. Like this was Boston. Like they don't play by everybody else's rules. It's they're hands-on, they're close-knit. It added to the story for me a lot, and I really liked it about it.
Do you think Jack Nicholson was more hands-on than one might expect because he was an FBI informant?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely never something I've put together.
Just crossed my
But
mind now, honestly.
yeah, like that would make a whole lot of sense about like him needing to know all the details to pass it along. But I feel like him being an FBI informant was like, hey, I'm gonna do this, but tell you guys about it so I can keep on doing it instead of like I'm doing this to tell the FBI.
I just get the sense that it was he really didn't give a fuck about anything. And
Yeah.
you get the impression throughout the majority of the film that he doesn't give a fuck about much, but he cares about a few select people. He cares about Matt Damon's character. He starts to care about Leo DiCaprio's character. And you think, like, he at least cares. He doesn't care about the fucking henchmen whose names I'm sure both of us have already forgotten. But there's like,
Frenchie, Bella Hunt, and
oh, you're so much better at this than I am.
Harry Potter, I don't remember.
Every single one of those white dudes look the same to me. But anyway, so you get the sense that he cares at least about, like, to an extent, those guys. But I think what those last 30 to 40 minutes are meant to show you is, like, not only does he not care about the people that we have spent the movie following, he has more people like those people, and he's been telling on them to the FBI, just either to keep his own ass out the jackpot or to make as much fucking money as he could by operating however much he could within the confines of the agreement he'd had with the FBI, which is just fucking ruthless.
Yeah. Oh, God. There's just so many good characters. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's just because I've seen this so many times and, pay attention to all the little details. It just, everyone feels so deep and conflicted, and just there's so many layers.
So that actually brings me to another question I had written down here. So as the movie goes on, you see Leo DiCaprio being involved in Jack Nicholson's escapades or whatever, criminal underbelly doings, and then reporting them to the police because he's an undercover police officer. And then you see Matt Damon being involved in the police and counterintelligence or espionage or whatever side of it you want to call it, justice and law, fucking whatever, and then telling Jack Nicholson's character what's happening on that end so that he can avoid it. And its movie ends with everybody dying. Again, it's not a spoiler alert. This movie is 15 years old. So I had written down here, did any of the counterintelligence really matter? Because I understand that, like, the movie literally would not have played out exactly as it would have if there was not any counterintelligence. But you got to think, at the end of it, like, the cops never got the microchips. They did get Frank, but they ended up, like, it's not like Matt Damon did him any favors. He ended up having to kill him, without or to avoid the risk of being found out. Leo DiCaprio got his identity taken completely away. So the fact that he was a cop, basically, it did end up mattering. It did end up being given to him by Matt Damon at the end of his story, but it didn't. And it very much so could have been an ending in which he didn't have his identity revealed.
Like at that point, Mark Wahlberg would have stepped in because he was still aware. It's not something they could have communicated because he had resigned. But, like, he knew who he was. He knew what most likely really went down and what sides these guys really were on, because, the tapes were already passed off at that point. But yeah, I don't know specifically about what had happened with those. Like, I can't remember the specifics of, like, the information that they were passing back and forth, but maybe that's a point of just saying, yeah, none of this really matters, and all of this was for naught, and there's 4 or 5 cops dead because of nothing.
Yeah, I think the more I think about it, the more I think that I'm just describing the point of the movie. Because one thing I can say certainly with my entire chest is that there is zero semblance of justice in the film.
Oh, no. No.
No one sees justice. Frank dies without seeing a day in court.
Through the characters to find out, and I can't think of a single instance.
No. I mean, not a single person.
The point of all of this was for fucking nothing.
And I think that maybe again, maybe I'm just finally realizing the point of it, or maybe I'm pulling at a thread. But the fact that, like, seriously, if you take these two characters away, like, so the one scene that really sticks in my head the most about this is the scene where Jack Nicholson meets with the investors, the Chinese investors. If you can even be so generous as to call them that, they are basically gang members. Um,
And one super scared dude from the Chinese government.
yes, which was hilarious. So Jack Nicholson went there and knew where the blind spots were in the camera setup because Matt Damon had told him that. But the cameras were there because Leo DiCaprio had told the police that they were going to that location. And basically, the gangs, the respective gangs or mobs or whatever, weren't gotten on film or recorded doing the thing that they were going to be doing, which they wouldn't have anyway if neither of these two things had happened. But and yet, man hours, labor, and time were invested to make it happen, and then it didn't because of dueling counter espionage. And they were kind of loosely
Welcome
able
to
to,
the U.S. government.
right? Like it. And don't get me wrong, it made for like a really good scene, and like it totally fits. And that's the thing is, like, all of the more I think about it, the more I think that this entire movie was pointless. But god damn it, was it still a satisfying, tense 2.5 hours?
Oh my
Like,
god, yeah. Like that's
the more I
why
think about it, this is nothing, but it was a great, great nothing.
like it's one of the reasons why I've seen it so many times. Like there are very few movies I will go back and watch repeatedly. Like I'll go back and watch it maybe like a second time, whatever it may be, but that's usually it unless I really love this movie. And it's a movie about nothing that I've seen like 7, 8 times, whatever it is, because it's a fantastic nothing. It's like Seinfeld, but Boston.
Which I hate that you described it as such, but I don't fault you
Well, I
because
did, and there's no taking those words back from society
it was the exact
whatsoever.
thought I had as well. So again, I can't fault you too heavily.
There's literally nothing we can do.
No, no. All right. So we've talked about this. I think most in depth when we talked about True Grit. The fact that some movies are about a thing happening, and then the thing happens for the entire movie, and this movie is about um them trying to these competing espionage or competing mole and rat situations. They're trying to catch Frank Costello, and then that's the movie, and then yeah, like that's the whole movie. So I have a little bit more, but don't have too much. So one final like plot specific question I have here, that I don't think, unless I glossed over this too, I don't think got revealed at the end. What was in Leo DiCaprio's envelope that he gave to Vera Farmiga?
It was the tapes that he had on um, what was his name?
Mark
Sullivan.
Wahlberg, or
Sergeant
I
Sullivan.
mean, Matt Damon. But see, didn't
Yeah.
didn't he give her that envelope before he got the tapes?
I don't know because I always kind of glossed over that the last couple times I've seen it, and like I was just putting it together today. But
Because he goes straight from, seemingly anyway, he goes straight from Matt Damon's office to Vera Farmiga and gives her that envelope, and then it fast forwards a little bit. I don't know how far, I forget, but it fast forwards a little bit to, Vera Farmiga laying on Matt Damon's chest, like gives him the ultrasound picture, and then
yeah.
Matt Damon gets a thing in the mail, and then that's when Leo reveals that he had gotten contacted by the lawyer. So it seems that the timeline of it being like, because that was always my assumption too, and then I'm watching it and thinking that the timeline just seems a tad off,
So he had gotten the tapes from Queenan's lawyer, Martin Sheen's lawyer,
No,
after he
Costello's
got.
lawyer.
Oh, you're right. It was Costello's lawyer.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't know. They don't have any specific dates or, keystones for holding the timeline or like for reference for the timeline. So we can't know, and they don't ever explicitly say what is in the envelope. So I guess it's like what's in the briefcase in Pulp Fiction type of deal. And it's really just left up to interpretation. But like,
This
what else
isn't any.
could it realistically be?
So that's one of the things I was going to say. So this isn't anything I'm like upset about. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm saying the movie's ruined because we didn't find out what was in the envelope. But it's not like Pulp Fiction because the Pulp Fiction suitcase is just there to be chased. Like the whole point of it is that it's a thing that like people are trying to get, and that's all it needs to be. And this isn't. In fact, it's made so little a deal of that come the end of the movie, you could basically forget the scene where he gave her the stuff because it never gets brought up again. But I mean, it could be a confession about who he is and his feelings for Vera Farmiga, something personal. It could be some type of evidence, but it seems weird given what happens like 2 scenes later. Um, and really beyond those 2 other things, or between those 2 things, I don't know what else it could be.
Yeah, it's just like the reason he gave it to her was to hold on to in case anything happened to him. And at that point, this was right before he went and, did anything crazy, uh, like trying to arrest Sullivan at the end, like stuff like that. So I feel like there's nothing else it could realistically be. So that's what I'm sticking with. Whatever, unless I hear from Martin Scorsese otherwise, that's what I'm going to think it is.
All right, yeah, fair enough. Um, so apparently this is how Mark Wahlberg actually talks. This is his real accent, which is hilarious. And he also based his performance off of the police officers who'd arrested him about 24 times in his youth and the reactions of his parents who'd had to come bail him out with their grocery money. And god damn it, if there's not a single endearing part of that sentence. God, fuck yourself, Mark Wahlberg. If you what?
He had one good song.
Oh, Feel the Vibrations?
Yeah. Good Vibrations.
No, it's definitely feeling the vibrations. I gotta feel those vibrations. Gotta feel the sensations. That's definitely how it goes. I also wrote down here that this film really emphasizes how easily the law can be circumvented from the inside.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, they definitely put that on the showcase.
When I picked this last week because I legitimately didn't.
Yeah, no, it in light of recent current events, it certainly sticks out.
Like there was one sign one line of dialogue at the beginning when Leonardo DiCaprio was in the police academy with, I don't know the actor's name, but the black guy, and he was like, "Yeah, you don't need any help being fucked. You're a black guy in Boston." And I was like, "Man, this was 15 years ago, and that still hits like a pile of bricks."
Anthony Anderson.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. Nothing's changed in the slightest.
When
even a little bit.
Matt Damon is out to dinner with Vera Farmiga. He's like, "Oh, I could just make something up to arrest you for. Like, I could just do whatever I want." And they're like laughing it off because it's like, "Oh, it's a funny joke because we're white people at an up-class restaurant." It's like, "Oh, this makes me sad."
Yeah. I'm gonna pivot away from this now.
Please do.
So, Vera Farmiga, I don't have anything to really say about her performance here. I think she's a decent enough actress. I find her career perplexing though, because she was in such big films. Like she was in this, which was a Best Picture winner. She was in Up in the Air, which I'm pretty sure was nominated for Best Picture. I don't think it won. Doesn't matter. But like that was, I think, 2008, 2009. This is 2006. Like she's in a lot of like prestige films at the time, and The only thing I can recall seeing her in the last 5 years are those the Conjuring movies, I think, is what she's in. Um, which what a bizarre career trajectory.
Annabelle, the Godzilla sequel, uh, just a bunch of garbage I've literally never heard of. The Bates Motel TV series.
I'm sure that's stellar.
Man, Up in the Air was 2009. That's the most recent movie that is of note. But he was in The Boy in the Striped Pajamas a year earlier. The Departed 2 years before that. The Manchurian Candidate in 2004.
Super
It's
weird
like,
career trajectory.
what a peak. I mean, honestly,
Yeah,
that's pretty fantastic. And then completely disappeared.
yeah. Um, so what do you think about? So I was reading here that Martin Scorsese originally wanted to get Al Pacino for Jack Nicholson's role, and then when Pacino couldn't do it, he then got Jack Nicholson. Um, how do you feel about those two actors being compared to each other in that way? Like, how would you see Al Pacino in this role?
I get why he wanted Al Pacino. I mean, he's the fucking Godfather. But I think there's no way Al Pacino would have played him as anything but the Godfather, but in Boston. Um, and
Oh
I
god,
feel
could you
like,
imagine Pacino trying to put on a Boston accent?
oh god, that would be hard to listen to. And I feel
Not that
like,
Nicholson's was any good, but still.
right, like it would go from being like a crazy movie with a crazy main character, but like a wacky crazy, to and scary crazy almost if it was Al Pacino, or like scary crazy. I mean, and I just don't think it would have gotten the tone right at all. I think it's fantastic the way it is now, and I don't know. Maybe it's just because I haven't seen the performance, but I don't think it would have worked.
Oh, God, no. Especially because Al Pacino has two settings: calmly whispering and absolutely shrieking. And I'm not saying Jack Nicholson's wild man characters have too much in between, but there's usually at least some in between.
We've
My last
definitely
note
talked
here.
about that before, and I could honestly say I have never been able to think of something otherwise.
What?
Him screaming or being super stern and quiet.
The roles are out there. As good as it gets sticks out to mind as he's not screaming, he's not talking, but he's not screaming. So there's the in between. That's Jack Nicholson's range. The last note I have here is about
I
how
was talking about Al
easy.
Pacino, but whatever.
Oh, Al Pacino. Oh, I'm sorry. I have zero examples for you.
Fair enough.
I cannot, and in fact, will not give you an example. Um, how easy Leo DiCaprio's character makes it seem to infiltrate the mafia. Like seriously, he shows up to a bar one day, smacks a dude with the glass, and they're like, "Oh yeah, like dude, you're in totally. We loved what
To
you
be
did with
fair,
that
like
pint glass."
his uncle was like one of his top lieutenants. He knew his father closely. Like it's not like it was just some random dude who just started beating up guys at bars and worked his way into the mob.
No, he definitely
I get
had
what you're saying.
like the clout behind him. And again, this isn't anything I'm mad about. You know, like it's not like I'm sitting here saying that this is an indefensible part of the film, but it does like. Granted, time passes a lot quicker than you think it does because when Leo DiCaprio, Mark Wahlberg, and Martin Sheen are all talking under that bridge, they mentioned that it's been a year, and it certainly didn't make it look like it was. Like if they didn't put that scene in there, I would have assumed this entire film happened in like 2 to 4 months.
Right.
Just because there's
I
no
think
good showings of how time is passing. But
I think the total time from like when he joined to like when they caught him and like this movie ended was like 2 years total.
okay, I could very
I feel like
easily buy
that's
that.
fair. Yeah.
But uh yeah, I mean Leo sure got up there pretty quick.
Yeah, I feel like it's just family connections. type of deal that kind of was a catalyst
Catapulted him.
for all that happening. Yeah.
All right. It's like the third time I just dropped my notebook. If it comes up in the audio, it's going to be hilarious. Anyway, if not, I'm just going to sound like a lunatic. I really don't have any other notes. This is such. Actually, I'll ask you one final question that I have, and then I'll turn it over to you for any of your final thoughts or anything that you had that I just didn't get to. For a 2.5 hour long movie, which is, in case anyone's wondering, not short. How quickly do you feel as though this goes by? Does it feel the 2.5 hours, or does it feel shorter?
Yeah. It feels like this is like an hour and a half long when you're watching it. Like it shoots by. Maybe that's because I've seen it so many times, and movies always go by faster. After you have seen it once, and you're not just waiting there in suspense the whole time. But at least at this point, it feels like it just shoots by.
I would say everything up until the many endings of the film shoots by. Right? I'll say everything up until Leo DiCaprio leaving Matt Damon's office shoots by. And then it slows down a bit, but at the same time, I wouldn't cut a single one of those endings out.
Yeah, I definitely don't think I would either. We'll get to my final thoughts of the movie, but this movie's perfect. Like, I wouldn't change anything. Maybe just some of the fast editing cuts that just kind of take me out of it because it's jarring to me, but at the same time, it's nothing of note.
Well, why don't you give me some more? Jesus fucking Christ! Why don't you give me any notes that you might have that we didn't get to earlier in the discussion?
In the opening scenes, when it's to be a throwback, a flashback, excuse me, to when Sullivan's like a young boy, the way they shoot Jack Nicholson, oh my god. In the dark, it's like Martin Scorsese wanted to do an Irishman style de-aging thing to have him be young, but like there's no reliable way to do that in 2004, 2006, whenever it came out. So he's just standing in a shadow, like with a black face the whole time. It's so weird to look.
I'd rather they play with light than try the de-aging shit they did in The Irishman, because that looks very sad. But yeah, I mean, it's not great. What else are you gonna do?
Yeah, no, I get it. Like it makes sense why he did it that way. It's just funny that the first like 3 scenes that he's in, it's just him standing with his face in the dark.
Yeah.
My favorite plotline that never once talked about outside of like 2 throwaway lines is how Matt Damon can't get it up in bed. And like they don't really ever touch on it, but it's like 2 lines like a third of the way through, and like right before the end, it's just like Matt Damon is just completely impotent, and it's just like that might be the most satisfying part of all of it. Just like he's a piece of human garbage and he sucks in bed. This makes me feel a little better.
Yeah, fuck you, Matt Damon.
Yeah, fuck guys with erectile dysfunction, which is an extremely serious disorder and should not be talked about lightly. Yeah, fuck them.
Yeah, just fuck Matt Damon.
Fair enough. I will never forgive him for Interstellar, but that's a different discussion. The final shot of just the rat running along the balcony overlooking the Capitol building in Boston. Fucking 12-year-old me thought that was the most symbolic, just monumental shot in the history of film. And it's like, I remember like saying, oh, the rats run high in Boston, thinking I was fucking Plato with some just life, humanity changing epiphanies. But yeah. And then the last note that I do think we should talk about is a Martin Sheen line, which I'm very glad it's Martin Sheen who says it because of his past work and his past history. With being such a progressive person is when he's talking to Leonardo DiCaprio about coming on as an undercover, and he asks him, "Do you want to be a cop, or do you want to just appear to be a cop?" And I just couldn't
Great
think of
line.
it in this movie that's just so fitting for what's going on right now. And I would feel bad not bringing this up and talking about it.
I know it's a
If you
beautiful
want to see
line.
the exact line, it's 14 minutes and like 15 seconds of the movie.
And he delivers it with such sincerity. I mean, and again, amidst what's happening in the world today, it really hits home.
Mm-hmm. And like Martin Sheen of all people, like this is the first time I've seen this movie after seeing The West Wing for the first time, and having that background for, Martin Sheen, even though you shouldn't carry over characters from other movies. It's just he has become that kind of figure, that kind of symbolism for just that kind of thinking, and it just struck me. It really did.
I got you. Anything
Yeah.
else?
Nope, that's all I got.
All right, then go ahead and give me your conclusion and rating.
This is just a fantastic movie, one of the best crime dramas, and I guess you could call it mystery thriller in a way, that I've ever watched. I think this is the peak of Martin Scorsese, which I know is saying a lot, and we could have an argument about.
I would
But
vehemently disagree, but I okay.
yeah, no, I fully expect that, but I don't care, and I will fight on this hill. This is a perfect movie in my mind. This is a 5 out of 5.
Yeah, I mean this type of movie that Martin Scorsese will deliver to you with utter. So one of the things that people said about The Irishman, that Martin Scorsese's most recent film that debuted on Netflix and can be watched there if you have approximately 7 hours to kill. Is that like, Martin Scorsese's made this movie before, or there's better versions of this movie out there. And that was true of The Irishman, or is true of The Irishman. But the thing is, like, I still liked watching it the one and only time I will watch it, because he just does it so fucking well. Like, if you want a mob movie, Scorsese's the guy. He's gonna hit the nail on the fucking head every single. Doesn't matter the context. Doesn't matter if we're talking about Al Pacino being old, Robert De Niro being old, doing it as an old man thing in 2020. Doesn't matter if you're talking about Robert De Niro doing it in the 90s as in a 1920s movie. Doesn't matter if you're talking about Daniel Day-Lewis doing it in a movie taking place in the 1800s. It doesn't matter if you're talking about Leonardo DiCaprio doing it in a modern day movie in Boston. Like, it doesn't fucking matter. He's going to hit the nail on the head every single time. It's fucking ridiculous. And this
Like,
is
if you
just
were to
another
rank,
exercise of that. Huh?
if you were to rank the top 10 movies, mob movies, gangster movies, whatever you want to call it, you'd have to give the top spot to Francis Ford Coppola for The Godfather. But like 2 through 10 is Martin Scorsese, and that says
Ooh,
so much more than being like the best of all time. Like
I
that
don't.
is just
I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to.
listen.
I'd have to give Coppola 2 spots there at least. Godfather 1 and 2.
I loop those together, but whatever. I know they're 2 separate movies, but it's The Godfather. Whatever.
And
That's
don't forget about Godfather Part 3, the real classic amongst the three.
that movie does not exist, and I will not acknowledge that you just said it.
Have you ever actually watched it?
Uh-huh.
I never have.
It's not good. I mean, it's not as bad as people say. Like, it's not the worst movie ever made, but Sofia Coppola is not a good actress, and that movie is not good.
I will never stoop so low as to watch it. I absolutely refuse. Anyway, this is a phenomenal film. It's got such a good cast. Oh my god, it's so well done. Everyone fits their characters so well. I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 5. I don't know why I'm keeping it below that 5 mark. I haven't given one a 5 yet, so maybe I'm waiting for something. I don't know what it would be. But but god damn it, this is a really great film. And I'm stingy with my final half star. So definitely watch it.
Yeah, this is my second 5 out of 5 with Along Do the Right Thing, which is also quite fitting for today, but we won't go back into that.
Nope. If you want our opinions on today's current events, check out our Twitter. We're keeping it separated, but our opinions can be found on Twitter. Anyway, let's bring it up to the next film that we did. I've been hitting my streak of keeping it modern by going with the 2020, the very current release, The Invisible Man, written and directed by Lee Whannell, starring Elizabeth Moss, Oliver Jackson Cohen, and Harriet Dreyer, which those names sound made up. Most of them are objects. It had an estimated budget of $7 million, and it has a cumulative worldwide gross currently of $123 million. So quite a success. That is certainly a nice looking ROI. It has no significant nominations or wins of any kind because it is excruciatingly recent. But it follows a woman, Cecilia, whose abusive ex takes his own life and leaves her his fortune. She suspects his death was a hoax. A series of coincidences turn lethal. Cecilia works to prove that she is being hunted by somebody nobody can see. Corwin, what did you think of this movie?
I've probably gone into this movie with the lowest expectations of any movie I've ever watched, just because of how much I hated the trailer. I'll stand by it to this day that the Invisible Man trailer is the worst trailer of all time because it gives away every fucking plot point to the movie. The only thing it doesn't really give off is it makes you think that this is going to be a psychological thriller, because it gives you some hints that, oh, this is just Cecilia being crazy, and Elizabeth Moss is just portraying a psycho person, and then it's like a schizophrenic episode. They don't really know if the guy's there or what maybe. And I just, every time I went to the movies, this was something that previewed, and it drove me insane. So I was very reluctant to when you picked this movie. That being said, I thought this was one of the most well done horror movies I've seen I've ever seen. I don't watch a lot of horror movies. I hate the genre. I'm a scared little bitch. I watched this movie under my covers in my bed. But god damn it, it was so fucking well done. Yeah, we can go into it later, but yeah, that's just my initial thoughts.
Excellent. Yeah, we will be getting into it. And because this is a recent release, I will say that we are going to probably end up talking about the entirety of it. So this is your official spoiler warning. If you want to watch this film without being spoiled on the about the plot, really how it goes, turn this off. Come back to it after you see it. It's on Amazon. It costs $6 if you want to do it the legal way. It costs $0 if you want to find another way. But I would recommend not that listening to us talk about it's going to like massively destroy your viewing experience, because as Corwin said, and I will defend his opinion vehemently, the trailer for this movie is fucking garbage and tells you exactly what's going to happen. But hell, is it still fucking a good movie? So anyway, stop here if you don't want to hear what happens.
Long enough ago where I did not remember any of those major plot points, and I feel like it was just the right amount of time. If it was any sooner, I would have remembered that shit and probably would have ruined a lot of the movie for me.
I think I watched the trailer for it because I was in the theater when I saw it, so I must have been around when I watched It Chapter 2, I think, because one of my friends, Dan, and I, we try to go see horror movies in theaters together because, honestly, no one else really cares about going, and fuck, it's a thing to do. So I think that must have been when I saw it, and that was back in January, I want to say. Anyway, it was a while ago. It does show you the entirety of the movie, though. It's not great. So basically, this movie starts off with Elizabeth Moss being in a relationship with this guy, living, they living together. She wakes up at 3:41 in the morning. I don't know why it stuck in my head, but it did. Packs a bag, does a whole bunch of shit, gets the fuck out of the house, and leaves her boyfriend, who then ends up committing suicide, and then being all invisible Manny. It Again, I knew every turn this movie was going to make, either from combination of the trailer or uh, general intuition for how horror movies go. But it really it keeps you invested. There's enough scenes in there that create doubt or create surprise without being so straight up jump scary, that it's enrapturing. Like, there's a scene where Elizabeth Moss is sharing a bed with her friend's daughter, because she's crashing on someone else's couch, or I guess bed. And she gets up in the middle of the night because the blanket got pulled off of her, and the invisible man is standing on her blanket. You can see the foot marks as she's pulling it away, and this is her first realization that there is an invisible man, and it like edges closer to her, and there's not a real true jump scare in its original sense. It's just low volume terror, like I don't know about you, but I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what the fuck is swing, bitch? The fuck are you gonna do? Stop it, it's getting closer. So I mean, how did you, what was your general feeling as you like kind of navigated where this movie went?
So the first note I have before I even started the movie was a question asking, will this be able to scare me without jump scares? Because I feel like that is
It's a good bar
set for horror movies.
Yeah.
Because I feel like too many just have these cheap jump scares, and it's like, okay, like, yes, this movie was scary, but it didn't do it in a satisfying way. It felt cheap. And I wish these notes had timestamps, because I feel like almost immediately after I wrote that, I wrote yes. The audio in this I felt was amazing. Really nice mix of either being extremely intense, extremely in your face, just, making your heart pound, and just being utterly silent, no audio whatsoever. Really matching with where the tone of the movie is at the time, and it really accentuates the horror of trying to see an enemy, a villain that you can't see.
Yeah, I found the silence to be especially effective in this because you can't see him. I ended up treating the silence every time as like we're supposed to hear something. So I ended up paying way closer attention so I wouldn't miss a detail than I probably otherwise would have with silence, because typically in horror movies, silence equals a jump scare soon to follow, which made anything that came after the silence tenfold more effective because I had been paying so much extra attention to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Right. I found myself doing the same thing because of the way they shot it too. A ton of empty frames.
Tons. Oh my god.
It like jumped out at me at the start because it was empty frames that didn't lead to anything. It didn't cut to an empty frame to have, a stack of magazines on the table move. It felt like they were training me to just to have to look at an empty room and look for what was changing, look for little things, little details that I wouldn't normally look at because there's no subject in the frame. And the way they used that throughout the movie, I felt was wildly effective. And for a movie with a $7 million budget, Blumhouse is known for a ton of low budget movies, and hopefully a couple of them that work out really well and fun everything. They didn't have the budget for a ton of special effects, and oh my god, the way they utilized it was fantastic. Um, like I feel like there was only maybe 2 or 3 jump scares. I didn't keep an active tally, but I kind of was paying attention for that specifically. And the way they were used was effective. They're jump scares, but they can still be done effectively. Um, and I just thought the technique used to create this tension, to create this horror, this existential dread of just knowing he's around anywhere at any given time was just super, super well done.
I also want to give a lot of credit to the general writing of the film, outside of a lot of the dialogue, which I think is um, probably most challenging to not sound corny in a horror movie because the "What are you talking about, man? You sound crazy" is so easy to fall into with a horror movie because like you need that character to be there and to like be that guy, but at the same time it's very tough to not make that person sound like how I just made it sound. But
There's only one time I heard that, but yeah.
I want to give a lot of credit to how little they explain the science behind anything, because
Hmm.
that is the one thing I want none of in these movies. I don't need to sit there and be like, now come on, with that, that's what you want to go with? Look, they didn't give a real solid explanation to the boyfriend's past business exploits like at all. You knew he was in optics. You knew he was rich. You knew he was a psychopath. You didn't really. They think this. They said the suit worked with like cameras or some shit. Didn't go into a lot of detail on it. And the thing is, doesn't fucking matter. And I
It
love
makes it
a movie that gets that.
right. Like when they explain it, they always end up explaining it in a way that's like, okay, I know for a fact that's not even plausible, and it takes you out of the movie. With this, it's just like, okay, optics, camera, like the technology behind this works in theory. It just hasn't been, fully fledged out yet. And with this, it's just like, okay, you kind of can get how this works. We're not going to try to explain it because it would be wrong and impossible. So we're just going to roll with it. And it makes it infinitely easier to just follow along and find yourself with that suspension of disbelief.
Exactly. And one of the other main traps that this can end up leading to is like a movie that ends up contradicting its own rules given how they want to explain the science behind these things. And if you don't explain it and just let that shit roll, then that's because like no one wants to be the dude who's like, oh, well, if it's like reflecting light, then like how does it work at night? Because that's not fun to be. But at the same time, if those are the rules they're going to go with, and then you have like a reflects light, but it's like the middle of the night. How is he invisible? Then oh my god, then like that's really fucking annoying as a viewer. And it didn't do that, which is again such a fucking relief. God damn. So I want to give a lot of credit to that because whew, it's one of those things that didn't hit me until like later on in the movie that like they didn't go into it, but I was just so relieved that they didn't go into it. Um, anyway, what was something of the other things?
The one piece of dialogue that did stick out to me as being exceptionally bad was when the sister breaks the news to Elizabeth Moss's character that Adrian is dead. She like comes into the house and it's like, well, you can't be upset with me about this, or you can't fear him anymore because he's dead. And I was like, did John Mulaney like teach her how to, like, was he the one directing the scene, like getting her to say it like that? Like, god damn, like that's the most horror movie way of saying that possible, and it just felt so out of place compared to the rest of the movie.
Yeah,
Um,
the sister and James were both not great in terms of
who's
their
James?
acting. The
The
guy she was staying with, the cop,
I didn't mind him much. I mean,
he
I felt
wasn't.
like,
Yeah, he wasn't.
yeah, he was
Like,
a little over the top, but like it made sense why he was.
I will say. I will also say though, that the one bit of character writing I thought was so fucking stupid was the sister. And Kel and I kept remarking on this as we went on throughout the movie that the sister's choice of actions are so comically insane that it's just unfathomable that a person would think this way. Like she pulls up in the first scene she's in, she pulls up on the side of the road at what must be 4 o'clock in the morning and chooses to sit there in the street in the dark, her sister frantic as all hell, and just be like, "What are we doing here? Why are we here right now?" And her sister's like, "Bitch, move!" And she's like, "Why don't you just like tell me what's happening?" I'm sitting there like, "Why are you like this?" And then like her sister turning up at her apartment later on in the film, being like, "I didn't write you that email," and she's like, "Yes, you did." And she's like, "Bitch, no, I didn't. I don't fucking know what you're talking about." And she was
It's
like,
like, did you know sorry, go
I
ahead.
no, it was just so it's like no one I get that they needed that to be in there because it sets up like when her sister eventually gets killed, they part of the uh I guess eventual if this movie went a different way, eventual legal case would be the emails. The email that she sent saying that I wish you were dead. But and so they needed all these conflicts to happen to set future stages, but oh my god, it was the most unreasonable I've ever seen a person be in a movie to their own sibling.
Yeah, it's like she just escaped this relationship with an absolute sociopath, and it was like super controlling and whatever it may be. Like your sister explains that to you. You don't think it's possible that like I don't know, he's like you can set up emails for like to be sent in the future. Like you can do certain things to like set that up now. Like it just seemed like oh, like there's no way that someone else could have sent it. Like obviously, if your sister sent it and then came to you and was like, "I don't even know this thing fucking exists," it's like, oh, none of that pops up as being a little fucking weird to you, huh? I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
mean, I get phishing emails at work all the time from like my coworkers' email addresses. It's insane. Like they can do anything these days. Um, to the side though. So one of the other things I wrote down here is how much buildup do you need when the concept of the film is in the name? And I was thinking about it, and they, you know, this movie wants to be, and is, I think, successfully a psychological thriller to a lot of, to a great extent, and as well as being a horror film. But the concept of what makes it psychological, what's supposed to be a guessing game for the main character, is something that we know off the fucking jump. Because again, it is the name of the movie. And I have to imagine that makes it so much harder on the writer's behalf because there's no guessing game for us, the viewer. You know, we know,
Yeah,
we obviously know.
and it's not like it's an original story.
No,
This has been around for ages.
the first piece that I can recall being like this is um, was it Orson Welles who wrote the original Invisible Man in like the 1890s? I'm pretty sure.
Something like
Or no,
that.
sorry, H.G. Wells, I should say. H.G. Wells. Yeah. I'm gonna stick with that answer. Final answer, Mr. Trebek. Anyway, so yeah, like this has been around. Granted, I was not expecting. I should have expected with optics that it was going to be technology. I was wondering if it was going to be an injection of some kind. Anyway, um, like. How do you think you would have reacted to this movie if the title was more ambiguous and you didn't know for sure that the boyfriend was there and that she wasn't just crazy?
Don't know if I would. I feel like I would have liked it more just because it would have made it so much scarier. Because you would go into it thinking it's like, okay, she's taking that medication. I don't know specifically what that medication does, so it could be for anything. Okay, why is she still freaking out? Like, obviously, like there's serious trauma here. Like, okay, she's imagining he's still alive. you don't always notice like the little things, like the door opening or like the breath behind her when she goes outside. And then that would have made the throwing the paint over him in the ceiling all the more terrifying. Like, what the fuck is this? And I feel like then it would have needed just a little more exposition about like, hey, he's not like a ghost. It's a suit of invisibility. Like, I mean, they don't have to have it be explicitly in a dialogue, but that little bit of detail would be the only thing that needed to be added. But think I would have liked it more. I mean, it's hard to say, but it would be something to see.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that makes this film so effective is that if I don't think I'll rephrase. If it wants to be that movie, I don't think you'd have to change too much from the way it's currently set up to get there.
Right.
Which again, I think speaks really well to how this is oriented. Let's talk about the ending of the film because I also want to talk about the a lot of the main symbolism of the film. So the ending after Elizabeth Moss escapes from the hospital, she goes to James's house because she thinks that Adrian is going to kill James's daughter, which he is. He's there. There is a scuffle, and then Elizabeth Moss shoots Adrian. He dies. She takes the mask off. It's not Adrian. It's the brother. And she was like, "Bum bum bum." Um, and then like the police find Adrian, uh, walled into, or captured and being held in the basement of his house, claiming he had been there for a significant portion of time and was put there by his brother, and so he's pinning it all on his brother. Um, do you buy it?
Do I buy that it was his brother the whole time?
Yeah.
Not even for a second. It's one of those things where obviously it was staged where, they staged his death. I don't necessarily think his brother did that all by himself just to stalk his sister. Maybe it had something to do with getting his inheritance. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's like seemed to be awful enough as a person to. I don't want to say he deserved to be fucking murdered, but at the same time, yeah, I mean, if it was him doing this all along, obviously he does, and it's a satisfying ending. And I guess I just am choosing to be willfully ignorant about the ending of this movie. Because it was satisfying, and that's all I need. And it's a movie, not real life, so I feel like I can do that.
I definitely think it has to have been Adrian earlier in the film because otherwise, why would I forget the brother's name? I don't really care. Why would he have gone to the hospital saying, "Hey, if you keep the baby, he'll let you keep the money and make it all go away," you know? Because if he was only after the money, if the brother was only after the inheritance money, he wouldn't give a flying fuck about that baby, and that deal wouldn't have existed, you know?
Right.
Um, and
Yeah, I could definitely hop on board with that.
and I definitely think like it tracks because one of the main ideas behind who the Adrian character is that he's a manipulative guy. Like he can get you to be what he wants you to be and do things that he wants you to do. Um, Eventually, the film truly ends with Elizabeth Moss going over to Adrian's house, the house that the film began in. Now that Adrian has been released from his quote unquote brother's captivity and cleared of all wrongdoing, she goes there with a wire under the assumption that she's going to record him on uh, audio confessing to doing everything in a private conversation. Instead, she pretends to go to the bathroom, slips on a second invisibility suit that she had um, hidden in a previous visit to the house, goes back out as an invisible person, kills Adrian in a way that makes it look like a suicide, takes the suit off, and then comes back out and acts all surprised. So the film ends with Adrian dying at her hands, but her getting to be guilt free in it. Um, what do you think of that as being like, I guess, the final twist of the film?
I mean, it's not the greatest ending in the world. It makes sense, but it's like, okay, sure. Like, you deserve it. You worked it out. It's satisfying, but like, it felt a little like at the end, like when James sees the suit in her bag, and it's like, okay, we're gonna go along with this. It's like, I have succeeded in beating him. It's like, okay, that just, I don't know. That's kind of weirdly toned compared to the rest of the movie, but I don't know. It isn't something I specifically dislike, but I'm not gonna say it's a great ending.
So it's definitely forced a little bit. I think that it could have been a great ending if she didn't keep the suit. Um, Only because there's if I'm James, you know what, man, I'll hide the murder, but like you can't keep that. Like, I'm not gonna let you leave with it. I'll just say like I found it and that's what it is, but I'm not gonna let you just hang on to the free murder suit.
I feel like it's one step below keeping the murder weapon.
It
Like,
basically is.
but like they can't prove that it was someone in an invisibility suit who killed him. It's like
And there's no proof
there's
of there
no
being a second one.
right. Even if there is, it's like, okay, all we have is this video evidence of him gripping a knife and then slitting his own throat. Not and like it's circumstantial is what the evidence they have, and I I don't think they would be able to convict her for that. I don't know. I mean, they have evidence of her killing someone else too, so maybe they could make that work. But um, I don't know. I feel like it's not quite the same as having the actual weapon, but at the same time, it's like that's you don't keep that. You cannot keep that.
There's no way they would let you keep that. Um, I so the ending is definitely meant to be the final redemption arc for a woman who had been, um, what's the best way of putting it? Just under the captivity physically at one point, and then mentally at various points. Um, a man who had her trapped in an abusive relationship, and that really I would contend, and I don't think it's overly disguised, is like the theme of the film. She's in an
Mhm.
abuse. She's in the beginning. She is in an obviously abusive relationship from her actions. We don't see any of it, but she details of some of it later on, and you have no reason to think anything otherwise. Why the hell else would she be escaping? And then the rest of it's meant to symbolize just the general fear that I think that they're trying to say a woman feels after leaving a relationship like that. Something that was that manipulative, that there's someone that he could still be out there and hiding and making your life miserable and being the cause of all your ill fated misgivings or missteps, and that's the reality for people. And then the end was supposed to be her conquering that in a sense. And I think it fits that really well. And I think 99% of the movie does that without it feeling cheesy in the slightest. I think it really tracks and flows so well. I think it really is really fitting, but I don't something about the ending, it's like I get what it was, and I do feel that sense of karmic justice, but it also that's the only time it felt cheesy. I didn't feel like it felt cheesy at all before then. Is that kind of what you feel too?
I completely agree. I feel like that is far and away the biggest issue I have with um, horror movies because they usually do feel cheesy to some degree. And again, this is just a really superbly well done movie that feels like exactly what you would hope this movie feels like, and far better than I expected it to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this.
I am truly amazed by how my perception of this movie changed by watching it. Like going
Yeah.
from trailer to watching the movie, it is incredible. Like I don't think I've ever gone into a movie with a worse opinion and come out thinking so highly of this. I don't think I've ever gone into a movie with a worse opinion, and I think very highly of this movie.
Oh, this had all the makings for being terrible, and I'm so glad it was not. And I'm so pleased with how much I fucking ended up liking it. I might watch it again.
What's interesting is the group of stories that the Invisible Man is a part of. It's like the dark something, whatever it is. Like Blumhouse has a lot of the rights to that, I think, and so they're going to be doing a lot of these different kind of movies. At least that's what I've heard, and I would just be very interested to see what they do with other movies like this, like stuff with like the Mummy or like the uh, Bride of Frankenstein, stuff like that. I don't know.
Have you ever seen the Robert De Niro Frankenstein?
I have not,
Do you know that was a movie?
not at all.
Robert De Niro plays Frankenstein, the monster, not the man.
Why?
Dude, you gotta watch it.
Classic monsters. Okay, so it's called Universal Classic Monsters, something like that. Dark Universe.
That would make sense. Those are very classic monsters. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you know what the name of this movie is, where he plays Frankenstein?
I think it's called it's called Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
That really gets me in the mood for Frankenstein. Mary Shelley. It's a very
Well, I think they're
imposing.
trying to convey that like it's not like the Boris Karloff Frankenstein films of the 30s where it's nothing even fucking close to the book, because the Robert De Niro one is very close to the book. The problem is it's not very good, but it's very
Right.
close to the book.
The original writer of the story, that's a very physically imposing name, well known. This is like Mary Shelley sounds like someone I would watch on TV who has a baking show. You know?
It sounds like someone who wrote the same type of stuff as Jane Austen.
Looking at pictures of Robert De Niro. Holy shit.
Yep.
That is something highly recommend viewers go figure out what this is.
Yep. Crawl under the covers on a dark night and just look at pictures of monsters. All right. Do you have anything else to say on The Invisible Man 2020?
Elizabeth Moss is a very underrated actress.
Yeah, she's really fucking good. All right, then give me a star rating, man.
I am very surprised to say this, but I give this a 4 out of 5.
I'm right fucking there with you. I think we're both operating under the horror movies. A decent one is already like we're operating under a different star rating that applies more specifically to horror films. But fuck, man, this is a fun, good movie. Like this is
Right?
it's actually good. Yeah.
I was more surprised by this than almost anything else I've seen in the past 3 years.
I'm fucking with you. All right.
Because
Do you
3 years back.
give me
Sorry.
next week's movie, my friend?
A movie that you introduced me to that is one of the funniest movies either of us have ever seen. Black Dynamite.
Oh, it's such a classic. Do yourself a favor, watch it, and pay very, very close attention. I have found countless more jokes every time I rewatch it. It's such a good movie. It's just a great choice, Corwin. I can't wait to rewatch it. I need it. Just listen to the lyrics of the songs playing in the background. It's amazing. Dynamite.
After picking this movie earlier, I have said so many fucking quotes just to myself, just laughing.
It is a brutally quotable movie.
Yeah.
I am going to go with another film that I have not watched yet. This one is good because it's very readily available. It's on Hulu now, which is why I have it in my mind to watch it. My pick is Rocket Man, the Elton John biopic. I'm gonna guess it's a musical because I think like the Freddie Mercury one technically counts as one. But it's just the music of Elton John set to the life of Elton John, and I like Elton John. So and I never watched it when it came out because it didn't get enough Oscar nominations for me to carve out the time for it. So, Rocket Man.
This is the first movie that either of us have picked that I have seen and you haven't.
Oh, you saw this?
I have seen this. It's very good.
Oh, thank God. All right. I really wouldn't want to have to shit on Elton John.
But the final scene, which, is musical in nature, is one of my favorite scenes in all of movies.
Oh, wow. I really can't wait then. God damn.
It's not because it's, a subjectively or objectively like perfect piece of cinema. It's just so enjoyable, and the music side of it I enjoy so much. It's just an all-time favorite.
I really hope it's Elton John's collaboration with A Tribe Called Quest, but I guess I'll have to find out.
How that would be an amazing scene.
Huh?
You know the ending of this movie without seeing it.
I swear to God, if it is that, I will lose my mind. If Q-Tip comes barreling out onto the screen, I'm gonna have an unholy reaction. But anyway, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I just want to see Elton John cut away and be, can I kick it?
Yes, you can. Can I kick it? All right. Well, if you don't got anything else, you can follow the show on Twitter at JuicingPod. You can hit us up via Gmail at juicethenumbers@gmail.com. And until Monday, y'all have a good one.
Bye.